It's amazing that it really just looks like a gigantic OLED TV.
Yeah, well, it's nice to meet you again.
Yeah, same.
Jeremy, of course, with Ventana. So tell us a little bit about the elevator pitch version of your company.
Yeah, so we started a company called Megapixel in 2017. All of us are from a background of professional video. We've been in concert touring, Super Bowl halftime shows, those types of events. The Janet Jackson wardrobe malfunction we did, that was 10 feet away from me as it happened. But we've also been in the motion picture industry for over 20 years. And we've been putting LEDs on camera for that long. Zodiac was the first feature film that we put LEDs on. That was back in 2004. So a lot of people see Mandalorian and they say, wow, that's some amazing technology, but it's actually just catching up now that the public is aware of those kinds of things, but features have been using it for quite a while. Gravity was another big one, First Man was another big one. So incrementally every year we've been making some awesome improvements to this part of the ecosystem. But a few years ago we actually said, you know what, this technology should be in the home. At the time though, there was nothing that was made for residential usage. All of this technology for corporate and for professional use is big and bulky and heavy, and it needs to be because it's typically rented. So you rent it like a car. You use it for a week, you put it back, it goes to a shop. So something might be on an auto show today, and then next week it's on a game show, then it's at CES. And it needs to be very industrial and reliable in those aspects. But for the home, too bulky, too much heat, too much power, those kind of things. And so we took all of this technology and we distilled it down into something very, very thin, lightweight, super easy to install, very living room focused, if you will. And we created a brand called Ventana that we sell the micro LED tile under.
Very cool. So it'd be because as we walk around these shows, I want to say about 5 years ago we started seeing these micro LEDs. And I mean, every year they come and go, and there's lots of startups. You guys are anything but a startup, you're kind of the original.
Yeah, we've been around for a very long time. Our engineering team has been behind a lot of these instrumental changes throughout the industry over literally decades. And this is the first time though that we're coming out in front of the public and actually branding our own LED tile. Typically before this, because of how powerful we are in the processing field, we drive a lot of displays from third parties. We OEM to Sony, we OEM to LG, and other companies that are really large in this space, but we wanted to create something that was hyper-focused on home entertainment, and this is what we made.
Got it, that makes sense. One thing we've noticed as customers are becoming, and as the homeowners are becoming aware of this and realize I can put this in my home, they're like, hey, how can I get it?
Yeah.
And they don't realize that it's kind of a kit system, so you have to buy parts from different things. It's like a computer. You've got your computer screen, you got your video card, you got the computer that drives the graphics or processor. One cool thing about you guys is, like you said, you build and OEM that to everybody, but for you, it's all in-house.
Right, yeah, we have the entire vertical stack. So when you go to Best Buy and you're looking at TVs, regardless of the brand that's on the television, that particular brand may or may not have made the OLED glass that's inside there, the driver board, the tuner board that's in there. It's all packaged together, and it's a proprietary, let's say, recipe, but the ingredients might come from different places. We've vertically integrated everything. So we own all the ingredients and we own the recipe, and so we've been able to make something very integrated where the operating system and the firmware and the software and the hardware is all designed by us in very tight-knit package, and so we get the best performance out of it.
So that's super cool, especially for me as a professional installer. I have to deal with the headaches.
Yeah.
And so when all of a sudden I can call one company and you guys take responsibility for everything, I trust that it's going to play nice together.
Absolutely, and the thing also that we expect is you're putting this into a home, and that's great on day one, and I turn it on and I'm playing video games on it, and I'm watching movies and sports and artwork and all those kinds of things. But we also care about the day two. What happens after it's been a year, it's been 3 years, it's been 5 years. We allow you to cloud connect to the system, and you can even get emails if a pixel goes out, or if there's a power supply that looks like it's starting to overheat, you may want to change it. We give you all that preemptive information ahead of time, because if this is such a prominent aspect of your home, you want to make sure that it's not malfunctioning. You want it to run all the time. And so while we like to say that this is the most reliable thing and it'll run forever, which it is extremely reliable, things happen, it's electronics. And so we want to make sure that, for the long term, you've also got that capability of keeping it running and looking tip top.
That makes sense. The cool thing about this is we have lots of people that want to use it, want to put it in a home theater, but they don't use it as much because it's dark, it's dim, they don't want their kids hanging out there. So this is like the ultimate home theater media room combo.
We've got a lot of different kinds of installations we've been involved with. One is, of course, I like watching movies, but I like being in my living room because it's nicer than being in a dark cave, right? And the brightness of this is far greater than projection. And so you can watch this during the day or with light that's on in the room instead of being in pitch black. But the other aspect is that we've done installations in people's living rooms where CEO is actually doing Zoom calls during the day on this.
Oh yeah.
Massive screen, but then at night can watch a movie or a sporting event or something. So the dual purpose is really nice, and it gives a sense of presence as well.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you is a lot of people with their projectors are scared to use them because of lifespan.
Yeah.
But with this, I assume we can run it frequently, and what's the lifespan?
This you can run for years. This'll easily go for 100,000 hours, and at that point, it'll just start getting a little dimmer, but it'll continue running.
That's amazing. That's like 2 to 3 times of what a laser projector is spec'd out for.
Yes, for sure.
Which is super cool.
No color degradation. You're not going to have burn-in like an OLED TV either.
Now, one of the things that you notice real quick when we check these out at the trade shows is the content they play is usually shows off the black levels, shows off the colors, shows off their strengths. First time I saw yours, I didn't know it was a micro LED. I was stunned. I was like, what is that? It's not a TV, it's too big. It's not rear projection, there's no room for projector.
Right. And
then I realized, wait, this is a real TV. Because you guys have no problem playing full high frame rate content and it looks amazing.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. We right now we're playing back 6K content. You can scale up to 8K and even larger. We can ingest 16 and 32K resolution on the professional side for movie making, and that's the same processing power that you get even for the home. So you're actually getting literal cinema grade tech in the home, but it's essentially infinitely scalable. So when you install this and it's coming in these little square foot modular tiles that are magnetic, and we can look at those later on how they go in and out, you just keep clicking more. So you can even decide to put in something that's a specific size today, and then next year decide that you want it to be a bigger or even a different shape, and it's very easy to modify. Yeah.
You can put it in and say, oh, it's too small, and you just add more tiles.
You just add more tiles anytime you want.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
What about artwork? Have you had a lot of people use it for art when it's off?
We have, yes. We're starting to spec out and install a lot of displays that are not normal rectangles, let's say. So a lot of square and some portrait that's not 16:9 portrait, but that's a little bit more 8:10 aspect ratio kind of thing that's kind of pleasing like a canvas would be. And for that particular use case, people are still watching movies and things like that, but they're also liking the fact that we have multiple finish options for the surface. So depending on where it's going and depending on what they're showing, they can have the high gloss liquid black, but they could also choose the matte surface if they're doing artwork that they want to see a little bit more of like a feeling of reflective rather than
that makes sense. Yeah. That's a good point. You guys have that kind of unique in that you have the two finishes, the gloss and then a matte. When do you recommend one versus the other?
So part of it is personal preference. We came to this from a mindset of the tile being like a building material. So that's why the shape, thickness, weight of it even is very similar to like a ceramic tile that you might put in a kitchen or entryway or something. And so in that aspect, you can buy honed marble or you can buy polished marble. And what do you like better? And it's really personal preference. There are aspects of the gloss that does have glare if there's a lot of direct light. This is a bit of a harsh light in the trade show. So in an area where you may have like direct sunlight coming in from a certain angle, that might be more appropriate to have a matte finish. But if you have certain angles that are fairly well protected, it can still be a very well lit room, but without spotlights and things shining. The gloss is amazing because the black level gives you that inky black OLED performance.
Resolution, something that confuses everybody.
Yeah.
Because it's like, is it 4K? Is it not 4K? If it's not 4K, then it's bad. Is it 8K? It's not as bad. But it's kind of, you kind of have to throw it out the window, right?
Yeah.
The way you think about it. It can play 4K, you can play 8K, your processor can handle all of that, but because of the way you build it out, it's going to be a custom size.
Right.
And it's going to look like 4K.
That's exactly right. I think for this type of application, I think about resolution related to what is my viewing distance, right? And at what point can I no longer physically see pixels, right? So that might define how large or how small is the screen, what kind of resolution do you want to build up. But at the end of the day, you can feed us HD or 4K or 8K or anything in between, and we'll scale up or scale down to fit the display. And this is the same scaling technology that we're using to make blockbuster movies. So if it's good enough for a digital cinema, it's plenty well good for the home too.
Right.
And it's just, the quality is amazing regardless of what kind of resolution you're putting into it.
That makes sense. So we did the video with you guys at the Savant booth at CEDIA.
Yeah.
And we've had so many people reach out and say, hey, how do I get this? Can I use it here and there? For someone who's looking into it, what do you recommend for a new customer that's looking into it? What are the things they should consider?
So definitely, as you mentioned, Savant is a dealer that people can go through. So there's a lot of Savant dealers around the country. We also have a direct sales contact on our website, ventanadesign.com. We'll take all those inquiries and can help with both pricing as well as installation details and answer technical questions for people. And over the course of this year, we're going to be building up a full dealer network around the country.
Very cool. As far as install time, how long does it take an install?
It varies on the condition of the space that we're coming into, but something this size, this is 16 feet by 8 feet, so on a diagonal, roughly 215 inches or so. This is about a 2-day install. We like to take about a day to do the leveling of all of the magnetic grid, running power and data and everything, and then the tiles go in a couple hours, and then there's a little bit of color tuning at the end. So 2-day process.
Cool. And say people call their favorite Savant dealer, whoever that may or may not be,
yeah.
and they say, hey, I'm going to put a Ventana system in. So how much does the Savant dealer do, or whichever installer does, versus I'm sure you have an on-site team that helps out too.
We absolutely do. So specifically when we sell through Savant, there's actually a package price that includes not only the tiles and the framing and the processing that you need, but it also includes all of the install tools, training for the dealer, as well as white glove service from our team, physically coming out for the install. And then the dealer can decide whether they want to continue doing installs on their own. We train them up. Or if they want to keep having us come out and do it, we'll do that too.
Very cool. Let's talk about refresh rates, because I've seen a lot of really not pleasant looking micro LEDs, but this is like watching a fantastic movie. What are the refresh rates? What can it handle? Are there any Achilles heels we should be aware of?
I'd say no specific downfalls or Achilles heel per se. We don't really like to talk about refresh because we do very proprietary things that come out of the digital cinema space. But what I can say is that the refresh of the LEDs is an order of magnitude higher than the incoming frame rate. So if you're bringing in 60, it's refreshing well over 60, well over 240, well over 480. And what's kind of special there is that the tile does not have a native frame rate. Its native frame rate will be based off of the incoming frame rate. So if you're playing back something at 24p, it's going to be an even multiple of 24p. If it's coming in at 5994, it's going to be an even multiple of 5994. And that's how you get such like a pleasing picture, refresh-wise, is because we're not doing any adaptation of the frame rate. It's always native, just incremented from what you were sending in.
Fascinating. We get a lot of questions about pricing. This obviously is a super luxury product with a lot of incredible tech. What would a customer expect for a system like this?
So tiles like this, MSRP, we're looking at starting in the low 6 figures and then going all the way up to a 7-figure number depending on size.
Cool, that makes sense. And that's might surprise a few people, but that's very common pricing around the industry. There's unusual about that.
It's very in line with many other LED and micro LED technology in terms of the range, and it is really at the upper scale of the quality level, and so it's also in that price level.
Absolutely. Like I was mentioning to you, I'm very sensitive to motion jitter and motion blur, and I've been watching this for a half an hour now, and I'm stunned at how good it looks. And most companies won't even dare to show something of this kind of motion because they know they can't handle it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the one thing that we always want to show at any kind of, whether it's an exhibition, whether somebody's coming into our office for a demo, we want to show content that you actually would be watching on the display. And so, thanks for saying that, because we've gotten a lot of comments that, even around CES, on televisions and on projectors and on other micro LED, not everybody's really willing to show something that might actually be pretty tough to play properly.
As far as a micro LED system goes, there's kind of 3 things you got to consider. You've got the tiles, that's what we see. Then there's a video card basically, or a video processor. And then you guys have the actual input video processor.
Right.
I'm not sure if there's a better name, but that's the way I think of it, is like a video card and then the video processor. Kind of explain those three pieces to us, especially the two different processors,
sure,
and how yours is unique with being able to scale. I know Savant can do the tiling, which is really cool.
Yeah, so upstream of us, if you want to have 9 ball games on at the same time, that's typically handled upstream of us in a Savant video processor that would take all of the signals coming in and then allow you to configure a nice iPad interface to move those pips around and decide which source do you want audio coming from and which ones are small down the side, etc. Once that's configured, that either singular video signal or multiple video signals will come into a 1RU physical box of ours that we call HELIOS. HELIOS is literally the same processor that we use in large blockbuster movies. We're using for this purpose as well. So that all comes in to something very small. It's like the size of a small DVD player. That has a fiber optic output that then goes to an IT-friendly network. So that can then, all the cabling can be run through a house. That can be copper or fiber pulled. And so that's standard, inexpensive cabling. It's not proprietary in any way. And then the display modules themselves have a little processor inside that we make called PX1. If you look at technology on the LCD and OLED side, there's a little driver board for the OLED glass called a T-Con. The one that we make is the equivalent of a T-Con specific to micro-LED, and this T-Con is really doing all of the heavy lifting for the video performance. So it's doing all of the frame rate multiplication, it's doing all of the special spatial and temporal dithering, it's doing all of the color calibration so that we know if a movie is mastered in Rec 2020 or P3, we're going to faithfully reproduce those colors. So all of that power is on each individual tile. So if you have 100 tiles, you have 100 video processors working in unison. If you have 200 tiles, you have 200 processors working in unison. So everything stays perfectly in sync, but it's essentially infinitely scalable because you have a processor for each individual module.
And this is so important because this goes back to us talking about you owning the whole stack. But there's so much that people don't understand in video, and as an integrator, we're constantly setting up systems and running into, but this TV doesn't play well with this receiver and vice versa.
Right.
And I know you threw out a lot of technical terms there, but the cool thing about it is that your company gets it and owns it and says, yeah, we want these things to all play together. I think HDR is the coolest technology that's been fumbled.
Yes.
And it's so disheartening, but to hear someone like you talk about it and say, oh, we get the color space and we get these things and we get how it should be reproduced. You know, we can do it more, you know, correctly.
Right.
Is so exciting because so many people have bought that incredible video experience or whatever it is, and then called us up and been like, hey, come help me fix this because it's not right.
Absolutely.
And we can't.
The last thing you want is for a specific receiver or even a cable type for that matter, not passing along the proper metadata for that HDR movie, and it doesn't look right. And we want to make sure that we can control as much in the chain as possible.
And you mentioned while we took a little break, but there's the old adage of you put quality in, you get quality out. This is such high performance and it looks amazing, but if you have a really poor video coming in, it's going to look not as amazing. So it's a good opportunity to get something like a Kaleidoscape that's an uncompressed movie source versus Netflix and streaming. Not that those are bad per se, but give yourself the best chance with the best quality coming in, so it's the best quality coming out.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We definitely like to see the most uncompressed sources coming in, if that's possible. Of course, Netflix and Hulu and TV Plus all look fantastic on the display, but if you're really in that, you know, movie mode and you're wanting to watch the absolute best fidelity, a Kaleidoscape server is a great choice.
The other thing is you guys talk about your HELIOS processor, and I hope people understand how important these are, because when Sony first came out with 4K, they had the best 4K processing chips in the residential market. They've been doing it, they have their studio, like you, they've been in the movie industry, they had all that tech they developed, now they can bring it and put it into the residential market. So they have the best looking 4K because they can up-res, and your processor is the same thing. It can take the content that's coming in and change the resolution to fit the screen in a way that it looks nice, instead of looking kind of like, what's happened?
That's exactly right. And what's really important too is because these tiles come as little squares that you can make in any shape and size, it's really important for us to be able to scale up or down a lot, just not a little bit, and it may not be scaling up into the same aspect ratio, and you may need to deal with a special shape like a square, for example, or if somebody wants to do a 2-foot tall by 30-foot long backsplash in their kitchen with video, that would be really cool. I'd love to see somebody do that. But we need to be able to deal with those kind of awkward and interesting resolutions, and we're geared up for that because of what we do in the professional space.
Yeah, so you guys can handle the awkward resolutions, but you can do it with grace too.
Absolutely.
So that's another thing people don't get, but when you get a 1080p image coming in, you want it scaled to look nice.
Right, absolutely.
And that's why your Helios is so important.
Exactly.
What about the 2:1 aspect ratio? Because the two things people get confused by is resolution and then aspect ratio. And the tiles are square, so when you stack them together, instead of 16:9, I get a 16:8.
Yeah, correct.
And so it's a 2:1 aspect ratio. That might make some people's head like, it's gonna make some people go, wait, what? No, yeah. But it's okay. And it's okay for a lot of reasons.
Exactly. So what a lot of people don't realize is now that content creators are also streaming companies, are also device makers in many cases, there's a little bit more focus on creating content that's great on a landscape cell phone as well as a TV. And cell phones are very widescreen. And so 2:1 has actually been adopted by a lot of content streamers as a standard aspect ratio because it's a little bit wider than 16:9. Your black bars at the top and bottom on a normal TV aren't massive. You're not wasting all those pixels like you would be on a CinemaScope or something. And so we felt like matching that was actually a way to carve a path for the future because we're seeing so much of that content really authored in 2:1, even though the TVs are 16:9, and then we can handle everything very well. So you can stretch up the image without distorting it. You can decide to have pillar boxes or window things, and especially once you get into these large sizes where, you know what, yeah, it can be a TV, but I also want this to be digital wallpaper when I'm not watching TV or a movie. And so I want to just match the size of my physical wall in my home, and that's going to be an arbitrary size. And so we want to be able to do that and accommodate really any aspect ratio and any size.
Oh, that makes so much sense. The one other thing I remember I wanted to ask you about is gamers.
Yes.
Gamers love big, bright, fast refresh rate.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm a gamer, the only downside to see to this is maybe there's delay. How have you put these in for gamers, or what are the gaming experience like?
Yeah, so gaming experience on it is actually quite nice. Again, coming out of the professional industry, if you look at virtual production, where you have a movie set built inside of an array of LEDs with a camera, latency there is extremely important because if the camera is moving and the game engine is needing to re-render for the perspective of the new location of the camera, that can't lag by 3, 4, 5, 7 frames. That needs to be as instantaneous as possible.
That makes sense.
And so we've developed a lot of technology. We can get down actually from the video input to the photons coming out of the LEDs down to 1 frame.
Cool. How does someone control it? I assume you don't use your Xfinity cable remote.
Correct, but not much more complicated than that. So for the initial installation, everything is done with a web UI. So it doesn't matter if you walk in with an iPad or any kind of tablet, Mac, PC, Windows, ARM computer, Linux, any of those things work just fine. So that's a web interface, and then we have a very extensive API which allows you to build your own apps on top of it, or interface with things like Savant and Crestron and Lutron and other things. So if you decide that you want to be able to push a button on your wall to black out the screen at night, you can easily program that.
Very cool. And one last thing was sound. So obviously you got this incredible TV with no speaker, so you need external speakers. We know you have a Sonos soundbar for fun, but whatever it is, you need some kind of external source.
Correct. So one of the kind of the ethos of a lot of what we develop is that we want to create something that is the best version of whatever that is that's possible, and we consider ourselves video experts, not audio experts. So it's possible that in the future we might start dabbling in audio, but for now we wanted to leave that to the audio experts.
That makes sense. How's the chain go? Like if I've got my receiver for my theater, do I go receiver to Helios processor to the TV?
Yeah.
Or does the Helios have like an audio loop out?
We typically don't deal with the audio routing because again, that would just add latency and additional failure points. So if you've got a nice AV receiver, you can just have the AV receiver handle the audio, and if that receiver also has a lot of HDMI inputs and outputs for the video switching, we can just take one of those into Helios.
Cool, I like it.
Yeah, nice and simple.
Thanks so much.
Yeah,
I'm
thank you.
just gonna turn and watch the show now. This is amazing. It really is, like the motion and stuff. It's like watching a really nice Sony TV.
Yeah.
But it's huge.
It's amazing that it really just looks like a gigantic OLED TV.
Yeah.
And
TV. I'm
yeah.
like, what the heck? And then I saw the Megapixel. I'm like, oh my gosh, Brad, we got to go look at. Like, it blew my mind.
Yeah.
And I've been looking at micro LEDs all day, but just had no idea. Oh man, this is exciting. This is cool.
No, we appreciate it. We have fun with this, and one of the things that's nice about